Well, hello, my darlings, and welcome back to the Just Jacks podcast. Or if you're new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. And who knew my writing down the alphabet would turn into something that had a life of its own? This never began as a curriculum. I had no set dream. I had no plan. I had no 10-year goal. It just started with a crazy meme and a pangram that I never realized what I learned in typing school would come to haunt me later, and personal history with workbooks that kind of felt more like war wounds than wins. I was only a part time homeschooler. They always call it during my chaos period. And I have a fantastic story to tell you about teaching grammar with colored highlighters and all that to refuse to let another mom face this kind of workbook trauma alone. Now I've created a full blown cursive writing curriculum with a full adventure story, fantastic characters, and something called the scroll. This episode kicks off a four-part interview type series. I put it in a question format to keep me on track and to remind me to keep all of the parts of the story together. I built it that way because it's much better for me to respond than to just blab on. So, this episode unpacks the beginning, the mess, and the evolution of my chicken character, where I almost gave up trying to get that one right. I also tackle the three B's of homeschooling and educating of boredom, busy work, and bucks, as I mentioned in the beginning. And I'm going to break those down for you on how I've answered all of those three, not only answered, but mastered. And let's crack the surface of how this wild thing began. So let's get started. All right. Question number one. Let's start with the meme, the TikTok, and the one sentence about the fox and the dog. What were the sparks that fit this whole thing up? Okay, as for the meme, I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw this meme about how this certain generation, generation that my kids are in, none of them know cursive, how to drive a standard or manual transmission car. And I laughed because I knew that my boys pretty well sucked at cursive writing. I took advantage of cursive writing. It was such a subconscious thing or unconscious thing like breathing or blinking that it was just something in my everyday life that I used and never saw the true value of it. I knew my boys had to learn it in school, and I remember flashbacks of them doing it, but never was an enforcer of it. I have no memory of making them do it. I do have a story of my younger son having to do 10,000 lines. And imagine if I would have had this pangram sentence then. He would have been such a kick ass cursive writer now. And guess what the line was? Mom makes the decision, not me. Love that boy. Anyway, so it started with that meme, and I prided myself because both of my boys know how to drive a manual transmission. Actually, one of them knows how to fix one. So I was quite happy with that. And I basically laughed at the cursive because it was never that big of a deal for me. The TikTok, the TikTok said you could self-publish your own book, and I thought all you needed to do was create a PDF. And I thought, oh my gosh, the amount of PDFs that I've created. If I had $1 for every PDF I created, I would be a very wealthy woman right now. And so I thought, well, if it's only a PDF, I can do that. And that is what that started the entire thing. Is it broke that open because it went, well, I can do that because I could easily upload a document. And then I was working on something with a font in a document that could become a PDF. And I saw the pangram sentence, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Now, if you want to take a moment and write that down to test it, I had many people at my booth actually write the sentence out to make sure that all 26 letters are in there. But do it again. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. There are other pangram sentences, as I found out. I only thought that was the one, but there's the 5 boxing wizards jump quickly, which would be kind of fun. And then there's bright vixens jump, dozy fowl quack. And I'm like, no, or jackdaws love my big sphinx of quartz. I think I'd have a hard time doing a children's program around that. So, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. That sparked it for me. I went, "Oh my gosh, that could be a story. How do we have a story with a fox and a dog?" Because I had already been doing some creation of characters and I had a fox and a dog already created. So I thought, "Oh my gosh, we just have to incorporate a chicken somehow." And that's how this all started. Was that crazy sentence. And I remember writing down the alphabet in my sketchbook. I have it even back here. And I called a friend of mine. I'm like, "Oh, could you figure out a story that ties all of these things together, these three characters on this journey through the alphabet, so that I could create a story that would tie it all together?" And my friend went, nope. No, that's way beyond my scope." So that's where it died until I figured out how to find the people to help me, finding the can in my can't. Question number 2. You've called yourself a hot mess of a homeschooler. What was the actual experience like, and how did that part time setup shape the way you approached this project? Hot mess of a homeschooler. Oh, we'll just take up a homeschooler off. I am so proud that the last 10 years of my life, I call it the chaos free stage, happy chaos, if you want to call it that way. Up until that time, there was just so much soap opera drama. And for the last 10 years of my life, it's been fantastic because it's been chaos free. I hats off to the women that are homeschoolers full time. That was one of the struggles that I had with presenting this project to the public, is that I basically toe dipped in a lot of areas and created something really awesome, but with that people felt that I was an expert in those areas that I created, like number one homeschooler. No, 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 no. I found a program where teachers would teach my boys and I only had to do their homework with them. So it was a blended program. Now, did they grasp everything in the class? No. And I had to help them. And that forced me to be very creative. And we're going to talk about that in an upcoming story about that. But it forced me to learn different ways and different teaching styles. And it really set me up for success because it made me understand that there are different ways of learning. And I had to have the help. I never considered myself a true homeschool mom. I was a part-time homeschool mom. I never had to pick curriculum. I never had to do any of those things. That also had its plus and minuses. That I had to also rise up to the standard of the curriculum that they gave if there was a problem, instead of finding a different solution that would work for my family. So there was pluses and minuses to that situation. In regards to a hot mess of a homeschooler, I just was a hot mess of a mom, period. There, all of that Hallmark stuff, or that you see the Disney Channel where the moms are um, these really caring individual. I cared about my boys, but I was a real hard ass. My son has a hard time introducing me now to his friends because he goes, "It's just not fair, mom." I said, "Why?" I said, "Because you're lovable now and everybody loves you." I said, "Where's the bitch that I grew up with?" Which I kindly remind him, and who drives me to that point now? He goes, "Well, fair, but still," because I had a very strong arm, and I wouldn't say necessarily that I was angry all the time, but it was more of a dictatorship than a leadership. Let's put it that way. And I'm learning now the ways in which I was more of a dictator than a leader. And I really struggled as a mom. I never wanted to be a parent or a mom. My boys knew that. I apologized right from the get-go that soft, cuddly part that a mom would be. I just was never wired that way. I struggled with it terribly. My boy and I actually had a conversation the other day about that. And when he was breaking down into my background a little bit more and seeing it from an adult point of view, he was beginning to understand what I actually was struggling with as a person, why I was a hot mess. And he's just kind of getting this wide-eyed look at the stuff and how his childhood was vastly different, and I'm very proud that it was. Does it still have its bumps and bruises? Oh my god. If you're in hell and you're 25% of an upgrade, you still could be still in hell portion of it. But I did succeed in upgrading them from the stuff that I needed to have upgraded for me. So that part was good. All right. That was struggling to be a loving mom. Oh God, the workbook trauma. Okay. So I have a story to tell you about that. Because the Monday, Wednesday program, the boys when I went to school on Monday and Wednesday are taught were teachers. There came a time where they found the school, the parents were needing extra help, so they had one of the accredited teachers be in the school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you would go to school and drop the boys off, and they would be monitored for their homework. Someone paid to sit there all day instead of like for myself, where I'd be distracted and doing other stuff while they were doing their homeschooling. Win-win for me, which means that I could go back to work full time if I wanted to, because my boys were actually at the school 4 days of the week. Well, one day I came back from the school and I saw a very strange form, and I was very troubled because the teacher was sitting there at the desk, and I walked in to find my son on top of the table, and I thought that was kind of weird because he wasn't moving. Now, when he had to do something boring, he contorted his body in a lot of different shapes and places to try and get through the homework. But this time he was face down on the workbook, and as I came in closer, I realized that he was sound asleep on the workbook, and he'd been there a while because there were drool marks on his page. And I knew that my boy was a very, very headstrong, stubborn boy in regards to busy work. If there is anyone and boredom, if there was anyone that I had to deal with the boredom and the busy work component, it was my younger son. My older son had a great currency with his video game, but my younger son, there was no currency. There was nothing. And it was very, very difficult to get him to do things that he found unnecessary. And workbooks were classified in that category. So take one look at the lady, and she had foster children and had raised foster children, so was introduced to all different kinds of behavioral stuff. And I just looked at her and I went, "Tough day." And she goes, "Yeah, yeah, it was a tough day." Only to find out later that he had never gotten his math done, and that's a story for another time. But how I got him, uh, but through that story, that was a victory story. I learned a true motivational tactic to get my son to motivate him, as well as what he is actually and what I actually am capable of. And it was one of our victory stories that we share. But at that moment, when the math book was drool infested and we were 82 pages behind in the math book, mom was there was no celebration going on for me, let me just tell you. So when I'm talking about workbook trauma, I think the jury is still out on who suffered more, getting him to do the fucking thing or for him to do it. And we battled. We had many, many, many battles over workbooks, and I knew that if I had to create a workbook, I knew it had to be something that could cut through that resistance, something that they would ask to do. All right. So, question number 3. You said you didn't mean to make a curriculum, yet here you are. Can you walk us through how the decision unfolded? What made you go from Spark to Scrolls, per se? All right. So, after seeing the TikTok and having the Pangram and knowing that I was stuck, I'm unsure if I saw another meme or another TikTok or something about hiring a writer, but I had hired so many people to build my hypnosis program and my websites and all this stuff to record some videos and editing that I thought maybe they'd have story writers too. So the way I have found my people on there has really been providential because I've gone to people and found them by picking the exact opposite thing that I'm looking for, and I just saw something drew to me about them, and I hired them, and they brought back this amazing story. And it was quite fun because I am Canadian, and there was a show that I grew up with called Mr. Dress Up and Casey and Finnegan, and I loved that. And as I found out, they're from the UK because they said, "Let's put on some fancy clothes." I'm like, "Oh no, let's dress up fancy." I'm like, "No." Just Let's just play dress up because that's what they used to call it when they used to go to the tickle trunk and they had a bag. And instead, I made it a trunk so that it could be something that reminded me of my childhood. And we went back and forth many, many times. When they came up with the names of the characters, the chicken is Lord of the Wings, and the dog, he's a hound dog. And because he's slow and he naps a lot, he's called Indy Napper Bones, and he's dressed in an explorer outfit with a nod to Indiana Jones. And then the fox, he's a spy, and he's Ethan Hunt, which is Ethan Hunt off of Mission Impossible. And they came up with these fantastic names. And I actually cried when I saw the names because it was one of the moments when I realized that this is actually could be something cool that people could enjoy it. It took quite a bit of going back and forth. I asked for more alliteration, and the story was born. And the coolest thing about the story writers, was that they also gave the breakdown for the illustrator, telling them what the scene of the picture of the storybook should look like so that they knew what scene to draw. Because I had no idea what the page should look like or what should be included in the story, but they included all of that, and it was just fantastic. Okay, so I had the story down pat, and as I found out later, I thought the story was 1,000 words, but when I went to do the word count, because I had to find out how much I was going to get charged for the audiobook to have it done, the gentleman came back to me. He goes, "That's way more than 1,000 words. It's 3,000 words." So they gave me three times the story for the price of one. And so I had the adventure story, and that was great. But then I needed to find the artist. So that leads me perfectly into number 4. Let's talk about Chicken. Why was he so hard to design? And what did getting him right unlock for the rest of the story? Oh my God. The artist part of this program was the hardest part, the biggest curse and the biggest blessing. When I first saw this gentleman, he had the most vibrant backdrops that I'd ever seen, and his characters were fun loving. I had a very strict idea of what I wanted them to look like. I had a artist rendition of them that a different artist had given me, and I wanted that feel to go into my cursive writing book. And I gave them to him, and he made a rendition, but it was horrible. The amount of rewrites that I had to do. One time I asked him to take my characters and put them in the story, and he actually cut and paste them and put them in the story. He never adapted them to do that. He just added them as if someone took them. We have a girl at work that's done that, where they've taken their face off of some person and really crudely put it onto the face of someone else. That's what he did, and I was paying him big bucks to do that. We had a deadline he was supposed to have there. So there's 16 scenes that have to be drawn. There's the opening scene, all of the alphabet, and then the scroll and the closing scene. And he was struggling with number 3. Then he gave me a half-assed version of 4 to 15 or 16. And I finally had to part ways, and it was so interesting because he called me the worst experience on Fiverr that he had ever encountered. And I'm telling you, people, I'm telling you, my darlings, he had no idea. I was so proud of myself on how I handled that. But there was a language barrier, and I learned my lesson. I have 2 official languages. I have English and Jax, and it can be very difficult when I speak Jax. Things can be a little bit convoluted. So I took that also upon myself, and that's why I never was rude or ignorant on any of the correspondence. It just was over. So needless to say, I decided I was going to jump ship from Fiverr and go, considering that I was now the worst experience on Fiverr for him. Who knew what kind of review he was giving me? I decided to jump over to a different platform called Upwork, and I put into my sales pitch, I said, "I'm tired of workbooks being boring as fuck." And that's exactly what I put in there. Of course, I put an asterisk where the U is in the F word, and I put it out there, and I just wanted it done. I need someone who can think outside of the box. This concept that I had has it ever been done before, and so I knew I needed someone who could think differently than that. And my artist responded with, "You had me at workbooks are boring as fuck." And I'm like, you're my girl. And she turned out to be a heart warrior for me. And we both went through this creation, and it's been a fantastic experience for both of us. But it really showed how patient she was and how particular I was because I really found that going through this that I had a true vision about this even though I had no idea what I was doing. So she gave me the rendition, she showed me her idea of what Fox would look like, and he was dead bang on. It made my stomach flop. I just went, "Oh my god, this is it." I saw him. Chicken was just a waste of time. She had Chicken and Wizard all mixed up and it looked horrible. And she made the dog to be a pug. And I'm like, any dog but a pug. My mom is just pugified. Everything to her is a pug. They're cute and everything, but I have a different choice in dog. No disrespect to the pug lovers. I will love one when it comes to me, but I would rather have a different one. And so first thing was a pug. I said, of course it's a fucking pug. So I said, no pug. And she did the hound dog. I loved it. But Chicken, it just looked flat. There was no character. There was no anything. And then finally, when she finally got, we went back and forth, I think about 9 times to get it back and forth. And then finally, because I wanted him to have glasses, I wanted him to have a bit of a belly, but that it looked cute. So the robe had to be tucked. And then finally, when the hair, I wanted it to have like a pompadour so he would be cool. And that's exactly what I got. And once he clicked, that was it. I knew that I had the characters. I had to give her different renditions and experiences of what I wanted for the wizard, and she mastered that. And Croc was so easy for her; she got him in one shot. And once I had all my 5 characters, the cursive crew was born. Number 5. You've said this thing fights off the 3 B's of homeschooling: boredom, busy work, and bucks. Can you break down how you tackled each one of those? Yes, boredom. Well, there's my darling listeners, as well as the people working with cursive. I knew that it could be a very boring thing to learn, and I wanted it to be like hiding vegetables in your spaghetti, that they had no idea that they were also learning something super valuable for them while having fun doing it. And I know putting fun and cursive in the same sentence is almost an impossible task, but one that I have accomplished. So I thought, well, the first thing I needed to do was to draw them in with the story. And once the story was there, they would be more interested in the story than what they were doing. And I gave 2 different options to that. They could do the writing and they could do coloring, because I wanted to really engage the neurodivergent child, the one that could do both at the same time. I wanted the coloring component. My son learned with color, and so do I. And I figured that there were other children that learned with color as well. And this gave them the option to do whatever they needed to do creatively to do the writing. And so the first part was the story to draw them in. And for the story, I'm going to give you, my darling listeners, a break from podcast boredom as well. And I'm going to play the introductory tract for my audiobook. You're going to hear 4 of the 5 members of the cursive crew. I chose 5 different characters: an owl, a crocodile, a chicken, a dog, and a fox. The only person missing from this introduction is the wise wizard. And in episode 3, we're going to go through the resistance that I've had towards having magic in my cursive series. In fact, my own family relative, my aunt, refuses to even look at the book because she heard there was magic in it. And one more thing, this clip is called The Scroll because I wanted the cursive writing to be on the scroll, and this way the learner and the 3 friends are all at the same level of their understanding of cursive.
Hi, I'm Captain Croc, and welcome to Crack the Cursive Code's adventure story. This is Chapter 1, The Scroll.
One afternoon, Dog was woken from a nap by 2 friends, Fox and Chicken.
Let's play dress up,
clucked Chicken. "Pick a costume from this trunk." Fox was fastest and dressed as a spy. "The name's Hunt. Eat in Hunt," said Fox, fixing a false mustache into place. Next, the Chicken found a wizard's robe and wand. "Magical stories are my favorite, so I'm Lord of the Wings." The sleepy dog was slowest and chose an explorer's outfit. It had a whip and an old-fashioned hat called a fedora.
"You can call me Indy Napper Bones,"
barked Dog. Then Wings pulled out an old scroll from the wizard's cloak. "Look what I found," clucked the Chicken, unrolling the scroll. Bones, Hunt, and Wings stared at the curly writing on the cracked paper. None of them could read what the strange writing said.
"It looks like an ancient language," said Hunt. "Only a super spy can crack this code."
This story and more cursive fun, there's even puzzles too, can be found at www.crackthecursive.code.com.
All right. So that's a little bit of a snippet of the story, which is fun. So for busy work, this one was the one that really, really helped me because my older boy, his currency was his video game. And I thought if I could minimize the amount of work that a child or a person learning cursive has to do to learn the alphabet as well as master the letters, then when the Pangram sentence came to me, I went, oh my gosh, if I told my son that he had to write the sentence 3 times before he went to his game, do you realize with the amount of homework that he had, 3 sentences to him was nothing. And even for my son, who the other one who had no currency, 3 sentences was not a big deal either, because the beauty of the program was that as they went along the story, the Pangram sentence words are words that they learn along with the story. So at the end of the story, they already know all the words for the Pangram. So all they have to do is write the sentence out for practice. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's fucking brilliant. And I'm like, oh, take away the busy work, because if anything is one of the crippling things of homeschooling is the busy work. And that's one of the things that why parents have chose to homeschool in the first place, is because why do more work that's necessary? If the child is proficient and they know what to do, great. And this would allow the mastery, because all they have to do is write the sentence once. And if they write it at the beginning of their learning, the neurological benefits of cursive writing allows their brain to wake up. It wakes the brain up in a way, it's almost like them doing some kind of exercises right before they start their learning process. It puts new synapses in there that maybe the problem that they had with their learning yesterday, that cursive writing had woke up enough of a neuron to make the connection today. It's such a powerful tool for that. Let's talk for a minute about the neurological benefits of cursive. I would be doing cursive a giant disservice if I failed to mention why we are talking about cursive writing in the first place, and why it is a important part for children and and adults alike. So let's start first of all with what cursive does. Cursive is one of the few actions and that use the body and regenerate portions of the brain and build connections in the brain that were never there before. It is a brain building exercise because the concentration and the movement in the hand of the flow, the magic is in the flow. Printing, in my opinion, has been a huge contributor to our reading problem in children, because if you think of how many times the pen lifts off the paper when you're printing, that is just ample ground for the mind to dissociate and distract and get the fuck out of Dodge, because the last thing they want to be doing is focusing on that right now. Whereas cursive is a continuous motion from beginning to end, and there is a flow, and the magic is in the flow. With that flow state, it allows something also very special to happen where the learning bypasses the brain and even then lands inside the body. The cursive can be a kinetic exercise. You can do it with your fingers, you can do it with your toes. I would love to see a figure skater do it on the ice and figure skate their name, because it's a constant flow of one from the one end to the other. Another thing it does is it significantly decreases the amount of letter reversals and flipping, because B and D look vastly different. They have completely different strokes to begin with and finish with, and it allows an entire word to be learnt instead of just portions of it. And it becomes a certain flow where you can close your eyes and move your body and write the word with your body. Another little note in regards to the benefits of helping with letter reversals and dyslexia is that, in fact, cursive writing has been cited in the International Dyslexia Organizational Handbook that it benefits dyslexia, and also it helps with dysgraphia, for it puts it into the body so that the body can know what to do and it can help the brain sort it out. So despite being told that cursive writing is just like algebra and you never use it again. And to me, that has been a huge disservice to cursive writing, is forgetting that it's a much like music or sports where you have to practice your body to move. This is really good news for cursive because, first of all, cursive is way cheaper than sports or music. It's completely portable and you can do it all by yourself. And then what the most important thing that cursive has over music and sports is you can completely suck at it. But if you suck in a flow, if you're in a sucky flow state, as long as you have the flow, you completely get the benefits. And that benefit is that it allows your right and left brain hemisphere to start talking to each other. It helps it communicate. It bridges the gap. If for any reason you are stuck in one spot, cursive writing is definitely the tool that can help you move from one spot to another. And now, the big one, books. I'm sure there are other parents out there, or if I don't know if you're even allowed to do that anymore, but I used to buy a workbook. And then since I had two boys, instead of buying two workbooks, what I would do is I would take the workbook and I would take it to I always say Home Depot, Office Depot or Staples, and they would cut the spine off and then I could photocopy it. Unfortunately, there were a couple locations that saw that as a copyright violation, because it says there's specifically no copying can be allowed. I knew there had to be other moms that were like me, so I created PDF copies of all of my works. I was so excited when it came to me that because my book was in black and white, that it was also could be a PDF, and this PDF could be used in any way, any group possible: a homeschool group, a school, a church group, a mom with multiple children. And if a child pours uh, food on it or destroys the paper in any way or defiant scribbles all over it or anything like that, it brings the freedom. But one of the greatest things that I loved about the PDF was that in the book, the story is very engaging and the child can blow right through it without getting the actual learning component and understanding the strokes and what's needed to create the flow. And the magic is in the flow. And so when you have a PDF, you can break it down into sequential learning where you can slow it right down. Because I've seen kids get through the book in about 15, 20 minutes. They love the story. The story just gets you, and they all of a sudden are at the end of the alphabet, and they're like, oh, but you can slow it right down. And the PDF does exactly that. As well as with my puzzle book, you can just do a certain theme if that's what you're working on, instead of having to make the complete commitment to the book. Although the book is fun as hell, but this way you can, if you wanted to do an animal theme or a science theme or a geography theme, then you can just purchase that. And also You kill two birds with one stone because you have language arts, which you're learning cursive, and either math or science because you're doing the other subjects. I really wanted the educator to be have a real resourceful tool at their hands, and I thought the PDF was the key. Another thing too is my storybook is also in a hardcover, and I need some advocates out there to help me get it into the library. I'm working on getting it into like a local library here, but my cursive storybook is a beautiful way of reading cursive. And if it was in the library, you could take that out of the library and help your kids read the cursive story and get their cursive writing reading skills on par as well. Number 6, you and your artist both wrestled with the imposter syndrome, especially when people question your roles. What did those moments reveal to you? Oh my God. One of the biggest things I have had to deal with this is because I am a jacks of all trades and a master of one, and that's just mastering myself. But I learn enough information to be dangerous with it and fly with what I need to get to the next spot. And it's kind of a very MacGyver approach to stuff, which makes me a survivor of it, but no expert on it. And this is where I have battled this in a lot of ways. For I never wrote the story, and I am no cursive writing specialist or consider myself a homeschool mom. What I had gone through to teach my children the material, yes, I've earned the right of a homeschool mom that way. But in regards to the experience and what pictures people have of it, that my experience was very different because my children were socialized in the great way and the worst way possible. And they wore uniforms to school, so they had a different environment that way. And it 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 challenged a lot of different I pigeonholed myself into my own small niche in so many different ways. And this was very difficult for me because I remember one of the times I was taking the risk of talking to one of the people that I work with, a doctor that I work with, who had cursive writing age children. And I was telling him about my book on my off time. And and he goes, "Oh, did you write the story?" And I went, "No." And he goes, "Oh." And if I had $1 for every "oh" I had, and I realized, and it was because he always wanted to write a story, and I told him, I said, "Well, you could always go on to what I did." And he just kind of talked it down. He goes, "No, if I want to write a story, I want to write it myself." And I'm like, "Okay, well, then you can be the author, but you can also have nothing accomplished either." So I took it onto myself that I'm gonna find the can in my can't. If I would have waited to become the author, this would have never happened. And so for some of you out there that have been dreaming of writing a book, you can find someone that can really guide you through all of it, and they can be ghostwriters, and you can have someone help you, or you can feel the same way I did. Because I kept wondering why this shit kept coming up. Why was it always these people that, "Did you write the story?" If I heard my, "Did you write the story?" and "Oh," one more time. And then I had a flashback of a time where there was like this scene in my mind where there was a music award show on, and I'm watching it, and all of a sudden this sneer comes out of nowhere. "Well, why should you win? Like, shouldn't people who write their own stories and write their own songs and record everything and everything, shouldn't they be the ones that win?" And it made me realize that the judgment I was having, that I was receiving from outside people, really started with me first, because I never gave any credit to the artist who's the singer who actually delivered the song. Because how many songs, like, why does it have to be all of it? Now, does that make it extra special? Yes, yes, it does, because of how that works. But collaboration is a whole different animal, my friends. When you have control over everything, the only person that you're arguing with is yourself. But when you have other people and you have to learn how to coax your ideas out of them, and they question what you really need and how important it is to you, Because when you're doing it yourself, if you decide to quit there, you quit there. But if someone challenges you about how it looks or is it necessary, you have to question yourself. And coming from outside feedback, that that was quite a pill to swallow. But one of the most fascinating things that when I was talking to my girl, my artist, she said, when I finally shared how I was feeling because I never wrote the story, she goes, "Are you kidding me?" She says, "I experienced the same thing." I show them the story and they're like, "Well, was it your idea?" And she goes, "No." And they go, "Oh." And I'm like, wow, does misery ever love company? And I attracted someone that actually had the same level of imposter syndrome that I did. And then I realized, well, if only the people that can do everything do it, how many songs would be out there? How many books would be out there? How many cars would be out there? How many products would be out there? Like, there's also the Henry Ford way of doing things because he had the vision of what the car should be. Did he understand all of the mechanics of how the car worked? No. Do you understand all the mechanics of how your car works in order to drive it and go? No. But you put faith in the people that do. And it made me realize that sometimes maybe it's a deep rooted thing about refusing to ask for help. But I learned that I can be a really good communicator. I learned that I really can have a vision and stick to my guns and create my vision. I also learned that I can be gentle on myself when I make mistakes because I just made a big recent one and it almost did me in again. And just that I'm still in the toddler stage where I'm falling flat on my face with this thing, and it still hurts to get up. It still hurts to get up. But recording this podcast in this series is my way of getting up. So, my darlings, this is the end of episode 1, and that's how it all began. It started with a meme, it transitioned into a scroll. It challenged me like no other to get my chicken with Elvis hair, but he became a comeback story that still cracks me up. I made something that helped me breathe through my own resistance, and in the process, I built a kick-ass program that I can be proud of that tackles boredom, busy work, and bucks in a way I wish someone had done for me 20 years ago. Here's the twist, though. I missed the boat, as I said before, with cursive with my boys. And even during all that brain retraining courses I took, cursive never came up, or if it did, I missed it. And I taught them the bare minimum, a signature, and that's because all that I felt was required. But now I look back and think if I had had this program then, we would have had something that helped without it feeling like a big deal. One sentence, one scroll, one rewardable moment at a time. Now, this was never just about cursive. It was about reclaiming something I thought I had missed. And the messy, scratchy part, it gave me the courage to take one more step. Next week, you're going to meet Fox, the character who sealed the deal for me and the reason I said yes to the artist who helped bring this world to life. We're going to talk about persuasion, partnership, and what it takes to bet on someone else's vision when all you have is instinct and a maybe. Until then, write messy and dream loud. If you have any questions about life, learning, or just need a dose of metaphor magic, drop your thoughts under Hey Jax on Reddit, and your question might just shape a future episode. There's also my website of crackthecursivecode.com, where I guarantee you will have the most fun learning cursive, as well as my loser, shift, and forthwith merch is there. And if this episode made you think, scribble, or smile, drop a 5-star review on your podcast app. It matters more than you know. Have a great day, everyone. Jax.